Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this July 24th, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. This is the Investigative Journal, and you can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on First Amendment Radio, that's Pacific time. This is part 9 of In Search of the Great Ice Wall. And Greg, what are you searching for? The Great Ice Wall in your freezer? You're trying to chip away at the ice that's surrounding that box where you put all your food to get frozen? Is that the Great Ice Wall? What is the Great Ice Wall? People ask me that. What are you searching for? And I said, well, explorers back in the 17th and 18th centuries thought that the Earth was a plane, not a planet or a globe, and that we were surrounded at that circle by a great wall of ice about 200 or 300 feet, and on top of that was a great plain that they could never get to. So a couple of them circumnavigated around that wall some 2 or 3 years, 60,000 miles later, and they couldn't find an opening. So I figured, how come NASA spends all this money telling us that they go to the moon, to Jupiter, to Pluto recently, Mars they want to go to, but they don't even search what's on this Earth. So I figured there's a big hoax here. Somebody's covering up something. And so I started to research this and found out some amazing things. Then I find out that there's a whole bunch of people also doing that now, and a few years ago, there weren't many people at all. So I said, something strange is happening here. How come all of a sudden people are waking up to the fact that the Earth is not a globe and a lot of NASA's science is false? Well, that's the question I ask you today. How come? And I found out that once you start talking about this, you'll find people very interested and also wanting to get to the truth as well. Well, I've been sticking my nose into other people's business for a long time. That's what you do as a journalist. I chose to do that for a reason. I like to write. And back in the day when I started, there wasn't an internet. We still use typewriters, by the way. And my first editor used to do it by hand. Yes, he'd edit your copy by hand, and you'd have all these little symbols, and then the story'd be turned over, and you'd see it the next day in the newspaper. And back then, people even read newspapers. So the idea of being a journalist was always asking questions to me, learning about things you didn't know about, and primarily doing it for selfish reasons. Most journalists said they want to alert the people, but in the end, really, it's a selfish profession. I did it primarily because I wanted to understand things for myself, and the heck with everybody else. That's really basically the truth. Oh, I could cover it, sugarcoat it, say I'm helping society. I want people to know what's going on. But in a sense, that was just the aftermath. The real key is, as a journalist, you progress if you stay with it and you don't buy and get sold off or basically what most journalists do is they sell out and they work for the man, and they have a little their parameters are very narrow on what they can tell you, but they get a paycheck and they go on, and they basically justify it by, like some politicians do. Well, if I can't give the people the truth, I'll get that dam built so that we're doing something for the people. Justifying it with little things, little rights in a world of a whole bunch of wrongs. And journalists do the same thing. Now, in every story that I worked on, after getting out of the mainstream and the internet comes into play, I find that we're dealing with issues, larger issues. For example, 9/11 was one of the first ones that I dealt with. And then if you could think of every other story, we'll go to Waco, Oklahoma City. We'll talk about the moon landings, which are fake, and et cetera, et cetera. involved in those are people that are professing to want to get to the truth, but actually are government shills or Jesuit shills, however you want to name it. And so you got to work your way through. For example, today I read a story on InfoWars by Alex Jones's group. And I remember when he started out there in Austin, I was working in Genesis. I was on Genesis Radio myself. And why I find it interesting is he wrote a story. There was a story on his website. Did you know there are government shills out there? And he's trying to point out who they are and everything. And the fact is he's one. So I started to think to myself, in every one of these movements, including this one, the Flat Earth Theory, including the anti-Vatican group, I always found out that a lot of the people I talked to were basically there to give you a lot of truth, but then they'll lead you down a wrong rabbit hole. And so in the beginning, I used to get angry. Who are these people? Oh, it can't be this guy. I really trusted this guy. Oh, why do people think I am? Because they spread rumors, and it's a whole big mess they create, confusion. So when I decided to look into this theory about the Earth and how NASA, I knew NASA was no good from the beginning, and when all you got to do is look at the fake moon landings, and those stories I covered years ago. But, could they really not understand that the Earth isn't a globe? Well, they know it isn't, but it's a big hoax. And so they take it to the extreme. And so when I got into this, to check this out, I found the same thing goes on. Got people that are out there in the forefront always arguing this guy's a government shill, this guy isn't. Oh, who is this guy? Everybody talking. One day I talk, there's about 4 or 5 guys out in the front of this movement I've seen. And most of them are basically accusing the other of being a shill. And I started to think to myself, who cares? I thought about this a long time ago. When I started dealing with 9/11, I started thinking that way. Who cares who they work for? I read an article today about a guy who was a whistleblower who was hired to, I believe it was from Israel, to basically, he was out of a job, and his job was to infiltrate Israeli movements, things like that, or pro-Israeli movements, and he explained exactly how it works, where they met, how he got paid, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how these guys connect with their people, and I don't really care. I don't really care who they are, as a fact. For example, there's when you get into the 9/11 movement, you go back and forth with that stuff. Alex Jones, I know, Michael Collins Piper, the whole group of people over there at the American Free Press, all this stuff. Now, whether they're so what if they work for the or work for the government? You're gonna have to live with it, and there's no reason to start. Hey, that's their job. They want to be on that side. Fine, accept it, understand it. And go on. In fact, I talk to them anytime they want to go out to lunch or whatever they want to do. We can sit and chat about it. I'd like to know more. It's never going to end. They're going to continually, people are always worried. They're monitoring my website. They are. So what are you going to do? Shut up? Well, you can. I've many times thought, why don't I just shut this whole computer down and forget about it? But I probably would if I wasn't a journalist. If I could do something else, I probably would. But I got into it. I chose, like I told people before, I choose the most ridiculous professions, the ones that that out in front say. For example, I chose journalism because I thought that there was freedom of speech. I got a law degree because I thought there was justice. Man, was I wrong. So I choose the wrong professions, and so I got to live with it. Now, the fact of the matter is, whether I am a government shill or not, many people, I'm living in a small town in Colorado years ago, And some guy confronts me and tells me, "Oh, you're the guy that works for the Mossad and has a government shill." I've read it on Alex Jones. I read it. People are saying that about it. And I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm really not." But who did he believe? He believed the guys who are out there, the bigger guys with more listenership, the ones that are paid by the other side. So I started to think to myself, there's no sense even trying to defend yourself. And why defend? Here's the deal. There's information out there. You get it and go from there. And you figure out who's on what side. And if you don't want to listen to them anymore, don't. If you want to listen to them, and there are many different things. I can tell you, for example, once I got into because I lived in Rome for a number of years and I understood the Vatican, I started to talk about the Vatican, the Jesuits. And I found out that the same thing goes on in that world. I ran across a lot of people who say one thing and do another. For example, in that, Leo Zagami would say, "Oh, this guy's a shill," and Leo's from Rome. Or then you get into the debate. Eric Phelps says that Tupper Saucy is a shill, and I'm going, who cares anymore? And if he is Eric Phelps or not, I don't really care. It matters nothing to me, and I still would have lunch with him, no matter who he works for. And it's a question of, do you really understand the information? And one thing, you're never going to understand the information unless you get it from both sides. And I told you a long time ago, I thank the Vatican. Now, any of these guys, I thank Phelps, the rest of them, and I don't care who they are. Because with a lot of their information, I started to go, and I have my own opinions, and I keep it to myself because it isn't fair to you. You've got to decide. If you like Eric Phelps more than Tupper Saucy, fine. If you like Alex Jones more than Greg Szymanski, fine. And, you're going to take what you believe anyway and put your little head on the pillow at night, and that's the truth, so I don't want to change that. I'm just saying to you, what heads are you putting on that bed at night? Whose are they? Are they yours? Have you really thought about it? So you get into this idea of the Earth not being a planet, and you see how NASA works, the occult. It's really an amazing thing how all this stuff comes together. And people say, well, why would they lie that the sun is 93 billion and make us revolve around the sun? Because they're sun worshippers. Yes, that's what they are. And they want to make the sun the most important thing in the universe. So they discount anything that is factual that shows you that the sun is not 93 million miles away, but it could be, and it probably is, only about 3,000 miles. And it's about 40 miles in circumference, or in diameter, or whatever, 40 miles wide. And so this debate goes on, but we fail. We don't care. And I'm using this as an example, this story. People go, well, why are you wasting time on this? Oh, well, listen, there's a lot going on. The world's going to hell in a handbasket. What the hell am I going to do? What are you going to do about it anyway? We all know you can turn on CNN. You can turn on all these things. We're getting hit from every area. Federal Reserve banking, a fraud. Orchestrated wars and terrorism, a fraud. We got government surveillance. We got Jade Helm. All these things going on. And you know what? In every one of those things I mentioned, you're going to have government shills working, telling you things. And I say, so what? Just take the information, figure out for yourself who they are, and decide what you want to do. If you're out of a job, maybe you want to work for them. You never know. I was reading a story about a guy who was out of a job, and that's what he did. And then he couldn't do it anymore, so he came clean. And I don't even know if I believe that. But anyway, that's what you're going to get on the internet. A lot of information, and you don't know where it's coming from. You can't look somebody in the eye. And so there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of things. But in every one of these truth movements, I have found that there is a lot of truth. And there are a lot of good people. And they've decided to be on one side and these other people on the other, and the battle goes on. Now, in the end, it's up to you to figure out things. Now, the reason that I'm doing this story is to really show you how everything comes together. The occult, the Vatican, every one of these things we're talking, orchestration of wars, all of these things, and even the size and shape of our Earth, all comes together for one reason: total control, sun worship at the highest levels, and the main supreme leader of this is in the Vatican. Oh yeah, still to this day, hundreds of years have passed, but nothing has changed. And so, it's up to you to figure out who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's what a journalist does. And since we have so many now on the internet, good luck. Now, yesterday I was playing something by this guy, Jeranism. Some people say he's a shill, other people say he's not. I don't really care, and I'll talk to all of them. And he's brought some good information, though. We're talking about things we can prove. I am tired of trying, I start talking about this story, and then people go, well, just talk about the Earth's shape and what you can do with your own two eyes and your own brain, and talk about horizons. Let's talk in those terms. Let's not talk about the alien agenda, what's above, what's in the Earth, all this stuff that nobody knows. I say to this day, NASA may know, but they're lying about what's above us. But we can't prove it, so let's stick to what we can for a while. And that may give you an idea of what we have ahead, what we can look for, what we can try to prove in the future. So I'm going to go to this video. We're talking about this horizon. This guy who's told you that he was looking at the Chicago skyline from about 50 miles away, and it's an interesting story. So let's listen to we're going about 13 minutes into a 31-minute discussion.
I believe there is a hump of water that is 100 times higher than any plane flies in between California and Hawaii that cannot be measured, that you call science. Cannot be measured or tested, you call it science. Scientific method, yet you don't use the scientific method. It just makes no sense to me. I've actually seen comments from people who say that they're all about science, they back science and everything, that tell me that if the Earth was flat, there wouldn't be a horizon. Craziness. Insane. Anyway, take a look at the picture. It's awesome. I actually have seen that this guy has more, but this one I found on another site, so I feel safe using it, but his other photos have watermarks, and he has not responded to me yet, so I am not going to use them. So hopefully I'll get some more. Let's watch this video and see what this newscaster's got to say about it. See if I've got something to say about him.
Until I found this photo from Grandmere State Park. This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage.
That is not a mirage. Okay? You can know a mirage when you see it on the road and it looks like water. You may see a little something at the end of the horizon at the beach. That, my friends, not a mirage.
Of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting here. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions, we have an inversion. We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image of that skyline back towards the viewer. And so typically we would not be able to see this. This image would be viewable from much, much higher in the sky, up in space. But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore.
Survey said. Everything that guy just says is bullshit. Thank you.
And what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline. Very interesting here. Here's what's happening. This is a good example of a superior mirage. So Joshua was on the Lake Michigan shore. He was looking towards the west, and Chicago's beyond the horizon. Should not be able to see it. However, with the right conditions.
Okay, before we get back to his comments and this goofy weatherman's how did they, this is, and the sad thing is, I'm from Chicago, and a lot of the people that listen to this are going to believe him. Yes, that's the sad part about this. And most people won't even care. So it's a mirage. The guy's crazy. The earth can't be flat. The earth can't be a plane. We have to believe the weatherman because he looks nice. He's got a nice suit on, and it gets to my story, and we'll get back to this video. But, people are really idiotic. That's what we live around. We live around idiotic people who believe anything they hear from experts. And I'm sorry. That's the way it is. How many people out there are going to, for example, I think 9/11 was an inside job, but the earth has to be a globe. Yeah, they're not going to believe their government about 9/11, but they're going to believe NASA. Now this is an idiotic truth finder. It's that simple. Very simple. I say one thing. Do not believe anything that comes out of the mouth of these people, anything that comes out of the mouth of the Vatican, and all of their little ecumenical workers, including a lot of rabbis and a lot of these, so-called Protestant ministers who have their you-know-what up there, you-know-what, about anything that it's all a lie. Same thing goes with your government, right to NASA, right to these weathermen, right to the Weather Channel, all of it. And if you don't think in those terms, to me, you really need to understand that this is a total deception. Not just, they'll do this, but they're really telling us the truth here. They're going to do a few things to make, they'll start a few charities and all this stuff to make it seem. Well, they have to do some good, don't they? To get away with 99.9% evil that they do. And, just think about all the people. Vaccinations are another one. I talk to people, they don't believe in, this government is a fraud. But they'll let them poke themselves. Vaccinations are important. To me, it's almost as if all this information is destructive. It's better you don't know anything. Ignorance is bliss. How many people in the old days understood more about what we live in than us today? It's probably incredibly lopsided, and most people aren't as dumb as we think they are. And we got about a minute here, and then I'm going to come back to, you want to listen to this weatherman for about 30 seconds just to have fun going into the break?
We have an inversion.
The right conditions. Tell us what those are.
We have cold air near the cold lake water and some relatively warmer air above it. This will bend the image.
Hold it! What the hell is that shit?
But instead, we're able to see it on the Lake Michigan shore.
Why must you needlessly complicate everything?
So did you guys hear what he said? That it takes special atmospheric conditions, which are cold water existing at the lake and slightly warmer air above it. Isn't that every day? So,
okay, hold that thought, and you'll see how crazy it really is. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal with these idiotic weathermen. Back in 3 minutes.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and the reason people are going to believe this weatherman regarding this idiotic statement regarding this superior mirage of the Chicago skyline that this young man witnessed from 50 miles away, which would be impossible given the statistics and that NASA gives us about the curvature of the Earth and simple math. People will believe it. And you know why? Because I remember the greatest part of my life was believing in Santa Claus. Wasn't it a great life when you were a kid? You could believe in Santa Claus, all these fantasies, and then you grew up and you realized it wasn't true, and you had this big letdown. That's what really this is all about. People believe in fantasy. And I've said many times, you'll believe there's so much fantasy in every truth movement that people love to believe anybody that gives them a line of you-know-what. And that goes on with Alex Jones, with all these bigger guys in anti-Jesuit movements. It goes on and on and on. People are going to believe all the stuff they want to because they're going to believe in a fantasy world. Right. And you piece together some of the things these guys say, and you'll see what I mean. I'm not going to do it for you. Go to them, including people in this movement, and see what you can take out as reality, as possible fact that you can prove, and what is fantasy that you'd love to believe in. And that's what they do to you. That's just part of it. But anyway, let's get back to this. And by the way, I told you a long time ago that many people that really aren't on the side of the Vatican and the government, that profess to be on the side of the people, so to speak, they're there to really make sure that this movement goes in their direction. They don't want people. They don't want the masses. Once they get to a critical mass, that's when what hits the fan, and people get in trouble. People get killed. People get really slammed, put in jail. It goes on because they've reached too many people. I tell people, hey, don't worry about me. Pretty soon I'll be on the Pacific Ocean, a long way from any kind of reality or fantasy, I should say, a long way from all this fantasy, checking out whether there really is an ice wall. So all you people out there, all you government agents and all you Vatican people, don't worry about me. I understand it. I'm not going to get into your critical mass. I want people to figure it out for themselves and to use you to do it. So don't worry about me. I'm just going to be out on the ocean by myself, trying to figure out how the heck have you deceived us for this long? And maybe I won't find it. But that really puts me out of the... You don't have to worry about me, do you? I'm just a little speck on this earth like you thought. That's what you tell us. We're just little specks in this big, huge universe. So I'm just a little speck out on the ocean. Don't worry about me. Back to this idiot weatherman talking about mirage. And people will believe that.
Well, I play with Google Earth here and give you a perspective from the beach side all the way over to Chicago. Let's think about something. Basically, for you to continue believing in the globe, you must believe in this superior mirage. And we're going to do the math after this video just to show you we know what buildings I'm talking about. And you can go do the math yourself. Again, please don't believe me. I'm a moron, remember? I might get my numbers wrong. And what we really need to think about, though, is when I show you the math, that mirage is going to be 3,000 feet off the ground. So do you really think you've seen mirages before on the highway, flat areas, even at the horizon? You maybe have seen what they call a ghost ship. Are those ever 3,000-mile mirages with lights? It's ridiculous. And again, it's all an excuse to block you from knowing the truth, keep you in the dark, think you live on a globe, which is simply impossible. For all you mathematicians out there, do the math. If you do the math, it's impossible. You would be able to see the curvature of a 25,000-mile circumference Earth being 10,000 feet off the ground. And when I say see the curve, I don't mean the way the parrots all say they see the curve.
I see a curve. I see a curve. Gravity. Gravity. Earth's a globe. Earth's a globe.
Yeah, I absolutely hate the parrots. Can't even tie their own shoes, yet they can tell me they know about evolution. Sure you can. So let's do the math. Distance from Grand Mare to Chicago was 59 miles. So we do our little equation, 8 times 59 times 59 equals 27,848. Divided by 12 equals 2,320 feet. So that is the amount of curvature, ground to ground, that would be existing in a 59-mile stretch. So is that what we saw in the picture of the mirage? Well, here we get to see what the math shows us it should look like. You'll see I took 4 buildings that we could recognize from those pictures in the Google Earth. Took each of their heights, including the Sears Tower, which stands 1451 or thereabouts. And this is what we should have seen. We should have seen the curvature of the Earth being the blue line, our line of sight being the green line, being at our total height of 2,000 plus. We shouldn't have seen any buildings. But what did we see? We saw this. Quite a bit different, and a difference of about 3,000 feet, and it's not a mirage. It is simply being able to see further than the owners of this world thought that we'd be able to. So, they got something wrong. Here's the picture again. Now, I think for some of you, that's the final straw. I think a few people out there probably see the truth now. There really is no way around it. We're seeing further than we mathematically can on a globe, so I understand the breakup may be tough, so grab some box of tissue, go get in bed with the globe, tell a little bedtime story, what it was like 4.55 billion years ago when it was just a swirling pile of dust, and by tomorrow you'll be over it and ready to face the world flat as it is. But we know how it is, that some of you out there are just going to keep fighting this. You just love that globe so much, you're going to make excuses for it. You're like that girl that's got a boyfriend that beats her, yet she blames herself and tells everybody that he loves her and that's why he does it, to protect her. You're going to be the same way with the globe. So you too need to go grab a box of tissue, go get in bed with your globe, and let's leave it at that. I mean, as long as you guys are two consenting adults, as long as you're 18, the Earth's 4.55 billion years, it's consenting adults. We'll stay out of your business.
Let's Marvin Gaye and get it on.
This just in, theory of evolution equal to the theory that Kim Jong-un has no anus. Wow. Charles Darwin, 1872, said, "To suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd to the highest possible degree."
This is actually not a bad imitation of exactly what's on the moon that we're shining the laser into. In fact, the specific one we're shining into was left there by the Apollo 15 crew. Now, we're firing on the order of 200 quadrillion photons per laser pulse at that reflector, and we're getting between 1 and 3 photons back per pulse if we're lucky. When we get
That's 0.000000000000000015%.
that photon back, we'll see a spike like that on the screen.
I am slewing the telescope to the lunar highlands.
Slew away.
Test number 1, shining our laser at a portion of the moon's surface devoid of all man-made objects, including retroreflectors, known to locals as the lunar highlands.
There's the moon. You can see the craters.
With the laser pointed at a random location on the moon's surface,
Initiating laser.
Dr. McMillan pulses 200 quadrillion photons into the night sky.
So we're shining the laser on the lunar highlands now, and we're getting nothing back except background light.
As expected, the lunar regolith, with its reflectivity index or albedo of approximately 8%, simply scatters the beam, and the sensors back here at the observatory detect no reflected light.
Now I'm going to move to Apollo 15.
Apollo 15, crewed by Scott, Irwin, and Warden, set down at the base of the lunar Apennine Mountains, which is where they placed the retroreflector.
Wow.
That's the location where Apollo 15 landed on the moon.
That is so cool.
Initiating laser on retroreflector from Apollo 15. And there's a spike beginning to stand out.
Is that it?
That's the return from Apollo 15. Light returning from the laser retroreflector at exactly the wavelength and distance that we were expecting.
That is so cool. I know you do this like 100 times a year, but it's really thrilling to watch it happen right in front of us.
Not just thrilling, but conclusive.
Replicating all the circumstances that were held up as evidence that that we never actually went there and that these things were faked. And once we were able to recreate these scenarios, then we started putting the elements in place, like shadows, like we replicate a moon gravity situation, and got in a spacesuit and went through it, and all these kinds of things. Once we had that set up, then we could clearly go about showing whether say a shadow was proof that something was faked or not, and we were very surprisingly easily able to go through and show that these were all natural environments that could occur, and there was absolutely no tooth to any of these statements.
Adam, you have the flag flapping in the breeze, but there's no breeze on the moon.
Yeah, and that was one of the most common claims by moon landing deniers, or nutbags, as I like to call them. And
there we go. This is typical. These are guys that are paid to keep this fantasy going for you. And that's why I'm playing it. And in the end, you'll find that I'm going to stop it here, because basically you can go on the internet and, one of the things that's interesting is there's a place, and some people say it has to be in Russia, where they fake the spacewalks in a pool, in a swimming pool. That it's an enormous place with just a lot of money spent to recreate what it would be like, and they do it. And I've watched a lot of segments, and you can see in certain when they make little mistakes where you see some air bubbles, where you see. I even saw some scuba tanks. Why would there be scuba tanks? I mean, this was a scuba tank, and just stupid mistakes. And people, it gets to a point where you're going to believe these guys because they're on TV, and they'll come up with some crazy stuff about, why this and this flapped, and all the pictures and everything. And so I'm not even going to get into it anymore because basically you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. And if you want to believe in the moon landing, go right ahead. It's a great fantasy story. And like I said, maybe it is something that you do because you can't believe in Santa Claus anymore. So you got to find something else to bring you back to the most happiest point of your life. So believe in all this fantasy they tell you. I don't really care. I said a lot of times you'll find some truth on these secondary that guy Jeranism. There's a few others. They're always out in front with some real good stuff. Mark Sargent, Eric Dubay, Matt Boylan. There are four of the top guys out there telling you about. Then you got Rob Skiba doing the biblical side of this whole thing, and those are the guys out there with most of the stuff. But you find a lot of secondary guys. And this guy wanted to get some things across about the flat Earth, or as I call it, the circle Earth. So let's listen to him.
Family, I decided to publish this video prematurely, but I want to get it out there. I want to get as much stuff as I can get out there while I have the time. Now, today, this video I'm going to be dealing with an issue about an edge. A lot of people can't conceptualize a flat Earth, and that kind of makes it difficult for people to really accept or believe. I have this drawing here, that I made. It's my profile pic, but people ask me about seasons, and if you can see this white light here, that would be the sun, and this red line would be its path, the moon and the sun's path, and light isn't infinite. If you can see over here, it's dark, okay? Not the best picture in the world, but I didn't want to spend 10 hours on it, okay? So you guys get the drift. The light, when it's on this side of the planet, it's lit. When it's on the opposite side, it's lit. The other side is dark. Okay, so light is not infinite, and like I showed you, when the sun is setting, the sky turns reddish, right? Because the light is moving away from you. Okay, that's a whole nother video. All right, now, everything I'm going to talk about at Edge is not something I'm making up or pulling out of my ass. This is based on other people's accounts, okay? Other people's what they witnessed and what they experienced, okay? So this is based on what they said. Now, we all know about Admiral Byrd. He's a guy who the hollow earth proponents, they kind of push him forward. That's their main guy, right? And the funny thing about Admiral Byrd is that he actually supports a flat earth theory, okay? But that's a whole nother subject. Okay, so we're going to talk about what he wrote in his diary, right? February 1947, I like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. That enchanted continent in the sky, land of everlasting mystery. Okay, so he's right there telling you that the Antarctica is more of a mystery than the moon. Okay, at least we can see the moon. We can't even see Antarctica. Okay, moving forward. All right, Antarctica's flat. Okay, and I'll pull these pictures up on Yahoo, but I want you guys to know Antarctica's completely flat. Okay, you heard in my previous videos there's something called polar flattening. This is part of it. Okay, so you could see this. Forget about the curve; it stays at eye level, so that's interesting too. That it continuously moves backwards. Here's something called polar flattening. You guys could look it up. 1 nautical mile is 1 minute in astronomical latitude. The radius of curvature of the ellipsoid varies with latitude, being the longest at the poles and the shortest at the equator, as is the nautical mile. Okay, so they're saying that because of the bulge at the equator, the poles are basically flat. Okay, it's called polar flattening. I don't feel like going over that. Now, here's the Antarctica Treaty. This is a document, right? Straight from the horse's mouth. And here you can read, and I'm not going to read all of this, but they're telling you that all of mankind, the so-called South Pole, Antarctica, humanity is everything's based on that. Our survival's based on what happens at Antarctica. So we have to know what's going on there. Extremely important. As you can see here, year accords with the interests of science and progress of all mankind. Yeah, I'm not going to read all this because it gets pretty lengthy. Okay, I just read the parts that I needed to read, and I'm not going to go over the whole thing. Okay, now here's some photos of Antarctica. There's some mysterious stuff there. We don't even know if these photos are real, but we know there's a lot of shit going on in Antarctica, scientific research that they're not telling us. Okay, and that's very important. Stop it. My cats keep fighting. All right, satellite dome. Okay, so here we go. Diesel bunkers, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole bunch of stuff there, okay? Now, here it is. Look at this. Despite most of the photographs that you see at the place, much of Antarctica is actually very flat and boring. It's just that flat and boring places don't photograph very well. And once you've seen a couple of shots, that's about as much as you need to see. Mountains in Antarctica. Yeah, there's huge mountains in Antarctica. Mountain weather is always dramatic. Always dramatic. And we're going to talk about this in a second. But the clouds and everything, it's...
Okay, I just want to clear one thing up. When you conceptualize, when you start saying Antarctica, you're automatically, because of the brainwashing since we've been in grade school, you're considering it a landmass on the bottom of a globe. Don't think of it in those terms. Conceptualize a plane like a record, one of those old album records you have, and the place in the middle where you put the spindle is the North Pole. And all around the outside of the album is a wall of ice. And that's what we're calling Antarctica, a quest to find the edge all around us. And he's going back only to Admiral Byrd here at this point. On shows I've done in the past, I've gone to explorers in the 17th and 18th century who document this. But they're not important to NASA. They don't want you to read anything about that. They want you to believe they're crazy science. It makes absolutely no sense when you start thinking of it. But because you want to believe in a fantasy like Santa Claus that's been taken away from you, you're going to believe them. Just the psychological element of this story. Back to...
fierce. It's fierce at Antarctica based on what people say who went closer to the, I guess you would say, the so-called interior. Not really the interior, but went further than normal. They said that the weather was horrible, okay? And they call, isn't this interesting? They call Antarctica the flatlands, flat islands, right? Okay, so there's some flat islands by Antarctica. Isn't that interesting? All right. Antarctica, last year, they said researchers calculate that the ice at western side of the continent was melting faster than expected. This is complete nonsense. Global warming is complete nonsense. What they're trying to do is make you go left when everything's going right. What they're trying to do is divert your attention. Everything's getting colder. Now, let's take a look. Does historic snow mean global cooling? Okay, so now there's been record lows of cold weather. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Like it says right here, it really is. I mean, it was cold as hell, and I live in Florida, okay? I've lived in New York. I know how cold it is here, but it gets cold pretty down here, too. All right, so we move past that. Once again, the relentless stretch of bitterness cold battering northeastern cities, including Boston, with the record snow, has many people wondering if the polar vortex is here. Now, on Monday morning, Boston experienced the coldest temperature since 2004. New York City woke up to the coldest February morning in 28 years. Okay, they're saying that, it could be as cold as damn the North Pole. Okay? So then they calling it polar vortex, and they got this fake ball Earth here, right? Terrible. Okay? Now, let's look. 120-year-old record low broken in D.C. One of many today and in the past week. So, I mean, it's getting ridiculous. A temperature of 5 degrees was enough to smash a 120-year record for a date. A moment worthy of meteorological reflection. Okay? So, here we go again. I mean, is any of this true? We don't know. But I think the sun is losing some of its power. I personally do. I think every day that sun gets a little bit weaker. We can't tell it. We can't notice it, but it is. Okay, so let's go down here. Now, people ask me about the edge. All right, so I created this little drawing here because I love drawing. And what I want people to understand is this is the flat earth that we live on right here. These are the stars that, let me pull this over here. These are the stars, right, that rotate above the flat earth, right? The sun, let me get rid of this actually. All right. The sun and the moon rotate above, right? The sun, I think at one point the whole planet was just, well, I shouldn't use the word planet, that's a habit. The whole plane was ice, and then the sun